My name is Shirley Taitinger, and we are at the Good Neighbours Care Centre, located on George and Sherbrooke Street at the corner of downtown Peterborough, Ontario. Good Neighbours Care Centre exists to help the poor and less fortunate. It is operated by volunteers serving the needy with free clothing and food. Each day we start with prayer to remind ourselves that in serving the public, we are an extension of God's hands. We are there for the purpose of ministering to others in meeting their physical and sometimes their spiritual needs. We are motivated by the Lord, who held the needs of the poor always before his followers, and he commanded them to feed and clothe the needy, and said, "Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, you have done it unto me." We began as Operation Blessing. Dan Statham, who is the National Director for Canada, I would be interested in opening a centre in Peterborough. My first response was, absolutely not, I'm not qualified. But I did promise to pray about it. I had experience as a pastor's wife and a mother, but definitely nothing in the business world, and so I felt very inadequate. But as I prayed about it, I was strangely drawn to the idea. Perhaps it was because as a child, our home was a single mom with 5 children, were always the recipients of hampers from the Salvation Army. They blessed us so many times with food. My mother was a seamstress, so she made our clothes, but with food that came, so I always was grateful for their help. I felt that this would be a huge challenge, but I would only do it if I could lean on the Lord and know that he would be the one that would be leading and directing in all of these unknown steps that I was about to take. First thing I knew, I had to have strong people around me. I approached Don Kennedy, who was a friend at the time, and he became my assistant, my right arm, and I often called him the other man in my life. We were together a lot. Then I needed to look up volunteers, and I chose to go for seniors. I knew that they had the time, needed a challenge. So they were very good to come alongside of me. They were from different churches, which was wonderful too. Our first location was on George Street, down an alley, and it was a very small but adequate building for us at the time. We started out with only clothing, quickly realizing that most of the people also needed food. So every day we literally prayed it in. Miracles happened every day, and people would just drop off the things that we were needing. It was just miraculous, and we proved God over and over. In 1989, Operation Blessing began closing their Canadian centres, and we were also at that time outgrowing our location. So with the Lord's guidance, we rented this present location, and the volunteers chose the new name, Good Neighbours Care Centre, because we couldn't be known as Operation Blessing any longer. Then I needed to establish a board and have the centre incorporated. The Lord was truly stretching me. As the need grew, I visited church boards to get support for food donations as well as for our rent. And the churches became very creative in food drives, and they'd put boxes in their lobbies, etc. And they were a wonderful, wonderful help. But it was really the dedicated volunteers that were the backbone and strength of Good Neighbours Care Centre. We became like family, and every once in a while we'd meet in our home for fellowship. In 1998, I felt it was time to step down, and Dennis Bapty, who was a volunteer here at the center, I asked him if he would take over the reins, and he did. Much growth and change happened under his leadership. Later then, I returned as a volunteer. No way could I have envisioned what the Good Neighbours Care Centre would become. I've witnessed God's faithfulness over the years, and that renews my faith in his ability to create something out of a mustard seed, because that's how small it all began. Every day I walk into the center, I'm overwhelmed with what the Lord is doing and has accomplished through these dedicated, committed people. Many stories and events, but my favorite. Just months after we had opened, a grandmother came in the center with her grandson, 12-year-old grandson, looking for clothing. It was for a funeral for his mother, her daughter. and he didn't have the proper clothing for a funeral. So we looked in the front where we had the clothing, there was nothing, but we had some unopened bags at the back, and we went to the bag, opened one, and on top of one of the bags was a boy's suit, size 12. You can imagine how excited we all became. It was a God thing, and it just assured us that he was working with us. That was a great encouragement. God is still looking for reapers for his harvest. Perhaps God is challenging you to step out of your safety zone. A challenge must be met with faith and trust. Faith in a God who is still calling his people to serve, and you must trust him to take your weakness and show you his strength. If you step out depending on your own abilities and your own talents that you possess, you will fail to accomplish his perfect will. Lean heavily on the Good Shepherd for his guidance. Stay close to him. Be challenged.